Hi, Dr. Tony here, founder of the Freedom Club, and today I want to talk to you about what the 96% of the population are actually doing wrong. Do you know that 96% of people never build themselves to a stage where they're actually financially secure, financially independent over their working career? 96% are not able to do it. Only 4% of the population reach a point where they can live off their investments without eating the capital of their investments down over time. It's a dramatically different statistic. So I wanted to take a look at what are the 96% doing so wrong and what are the 4% doing differently. Well, the first is this. 96% are paying themselves last. So what we mean by that is they are paying the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. They are paying everybody else out, and they're hoping that there is money left over at the end of the month that they might be able to save. And even when they talk about saving, they're getting that part wrong. What the 4% are doing differently is the 4% are paying themselves first. So let me just talk about that. When we talk about paying themselves first, they are paying their future self. They are not. They are paying their future self, who no longer is relying on income from work, because at some point one of three things is going to happen: either you're not going to be on the planet anymore, or you're going to reach a point where you no longer want to work anymore, or you no longer can work anymore. The 4% understand that they need to have other sources of income that they can rely on to transition away from their earned income as fast as they reasonably can. The 96% don't. So the 96% pay themselves last, they try to budgets don't work and they get it wrong. The 4% prioritise paying themselves first. The second thing we see is the 96% live above their means. Their means, I'll get it right. Whereas the 4% live below their means. So what do we mean by that? What we see is two groups in the 96%. The first group, they actually do struggle month to month. So what we're seeing with them is they do have stress that's hitting them month to month, just living paycheck to paycheck, and they are obviously struggling. But there is a much greater group that often aren't even realising they're actually in the 96%, that they're kind of okay month to month, but they're living outside of their means because they're not making provision for things like semi-annual bills or irregular bills that come in. So things like car service, car tyre replacement, the water bills, electricity bills that come in every 2 or 3 months. And so the stress comes in where they try to pay these bills out of a fortnightly paycheck or a monthly paycheck that isn't big enough and isn't designed to pay an irregular bill like a 6-monthly bill out of it. So they're okay month to month for a short while, and then something happens with these irregular bills that then kicks them a little bit out of living above them or into living above their means. And what we see coming out of that is often because of that, they're getting themselves into debt. They're starting to slowly creep up money on their credit card, or they haven't put money aside for things like replacement of furniture or for car replacement, or haven't made provision for things like the Christmas gifts coming up end of the year, or in particular, a very common one we see is they haven't made provision for a car replacement. So when the time comes to replace their car, they're financing it. The 4% are not. The 4% are not getting debt, okay? They're not getting into debt for things that go down in value. It's a very, very key difference. In fact, on average with our clients, what we're seeing is between 40 to 55% of the take-home pay of the 96% goes to the banks to service debt. Puts a major anchor behind you. If you've got that much of your money going out, how do you get ahead financially? How do you start putting money aside to pay yourself first when you have that much money going out to debt? And it is invariably happening because they are creeping outside of the living within their means. Fundamentally different to what the 4% are doing. The 4% don't have that money going to debt because they've made provision here correctly, and there's a method and a way to do it that actually makes it quite stress-free and actually makes it simpler and easier to live your world this way than to live your world this way. The last main thing we see with the 96% is the 96% are getting negative cash flow investments. Okay? Negative cash flow investments. And this often is the case, if they're investing at all, they haven't put savings aside, but know that they've got to do something. Know that they've got to do something to try to get ahead, but they haven't put savings aside because they're paying themselves last, they're living above their means, and they've got money going out in debt payments. So they'll often buy investments or assets that take money out of their pocket every single month. And this can be a major source of stress and can also unravel financially quite quickly, because often they've got no buffer to withstand any shock. For a property, it might be things like a vacancy period in the property or the like. They've got no ability to withstand that buffer, and because they're now getting more money taken out of their pocket, they've actually put more pressure on their month-to-month cash flow. The 4% do things quite differently. The 4% know that the game is freedom. They know that freedom comes from cash flow. So they are investing in positive cash flow investments that put money in their pocket, not take money out of their pocket. And they're able to do that because they're paying themselves first, they're living below their means, and they're not taking on debt for things that go down in value. And so they focus on investments that put money in their pocket. These are some of the 4 differences that we actually see that have the 96% struggling financially and not getting ahead financially over the course of their working life, whereas we have the 4% going north like a homesick angel and getting a radically different outcome. Hope you find some of this insight useful, and what I encourage you to do is make a choice, 96% or 4%, and choose freedom.